This is Nan McKay, and this is the story of Christine Crandell. She's president of New Business Strategies and has created measurable value for over 100 business to business, private, and public companies in North America, Australia, and Europe as a recognized expert in customer experience transformation and strategy. Her clients realize, on average, 40 to 50% increases in revenue and ROI. Now, Christine has written a very interesting article called Six Megatrends of the New Normal, which you can read on our blog page and which I highly recommend you read. But I really thought you'd get a lot out of it if you were able to hear directly from her. So let's talk about a couple of things. First of all, welcome, Christine Crandell.
Oh, thank you for having me, Nan.
So let's talk about how's the pandemic affecting your business world, and then we'll go on into some of the other areas.
Well, we are, being affected as everyone else is. And, our existing clients, fortunately, are staying with us. We just re-signed our big Australian client for another year. So I am thankful and grateful for that. And we're also seeing a lot of new prospects taking their time. They don't know yet. They don't know what to do, right? So they're kicking the tires, they're trying to understand, and it's part of the process.
So at least you are still operating today.
And yes, and as I said, I'm extremely grateful for that. There are many businesses that are not in that position, and there are many people that are in a heartbreaking situation. So we have to count our blessings.
Definitely true. Tell me how it's affecting you personally. Do you have elderly parents or anything where it's affecting you that way?
No, my parents have all passed on some years ago. We're sheltered in place here in the Santa Cruz Mountains down in Silicon Valley. And it's my husband and myself and our dog. And we figured out a process, right? I'm the one who typically goes out and runs the errands, and the house is now in zones, so everybody has their own personal zone. The dog got the hallway. And it's really, some days are good and some days are not so good, right? But it's really focusing, or at least for me, it's focusing on how to help, how to reach out. I touch base with a lot of people. I check in. That helps me, right? Because I can, who needs to be, helped. And also I try to get a workout in quite often. So, but again, this is the new normal, and we just need to just deal with it, as my dad used to say.
Well, let's get on into the article. I'm so impressed by the article you wrote, Six Megatrends of the New Normal. Now, what do you mean by the new normal?
So let me give you a little bit of background into this, and very, very briefly. And the first is that when we look at trends, we do a lot of work in trends, right? We affectionately call reading the tea leaves. Trends are not something that ever happen overnight. They're things that ferment themselves over time. They grow over time. And it's usually a tipping point or a number of trends that interact with each other that cause them to all of a sudden pop onto our screen. And oftentimes we are surprised, blindsided, shocked, that this has changed, this is new change. So what started me writing this piece was, first, we need to look forward, right? We can't look back. And what I mean by there is no new normal, that says what the way life was in 6 months ago, right? 5 months ago, will never reappear. It's and that's not a negative, right? That just is, right? It's done. And when we look now, we have to say, what does that new normal look like? It's also called, what does that new reality look like? And that's where we ought to be focused, because in the midst of all of this amazingly negative, heartbreaking news, there is goodness, right? And there are positive signs going forward. And I think it's very healthy for us as a culture to really focus on those positive signs.
Yes, because if we focus on the negative signs, it's just so easy to get ourselves
Right.
depressed.
Right.
Now, can you tell us about these trends and how you think they will affect how business is done in the new normal?
Right. So this is, really for businesses that are dealing with other businesses, meaning maybe I'm a pipe manufacturer that is selling to oil rigs, or I am a machine shop that's selling to a printing house, or so it's not really towards consumers, though it does impact consumers. I think one of the first things is in this environment of continuing accelerating change, right? And we've seen that over the last 6 weeks, right? Massive amounts of change happening, and that pace will accelerate. So that first trend is really time is the basis of competition. And I'm going to try to go through all of 6 of them quickly because they unpack into lots of different things. But where time comes from is both on the social side and also on the business side, that says we as individuals have become addicted to being busy, right? It's this hallmark of, I don't know what, but we're oh so busy. In this, there has been a growing movement and a growing trend underneath about efficiency and time. How do we do things to be faster? There wasn't until now a focus on how do I do things faster without degradation of quality and degradation of the experience, right? When we look at going forward, it's going to be how do I deliver, that pipe, or how do I deliver that machine, or how do I deliver that crate, or how do I deliver a piece of content faster and easier than my competitors, but without the degradation of quality and the experience. So time becomes the variable here. And the reason it's important is compared to our forefathers, we have a world of abundance. I know it doesn't seem like that right now, but realistically, if we look at, over the past 100 years, and we go forward in the next 20, 30, 40 years, we live in a world of abundance. Time is the scarce resource, right? So time is fungible, or perishable, I should say. The second trend is on authentic communications will completely redefine commerce. And this has been growing for a while. Again, we have personalization in marketing, which really isn't personalization, but we call it personalization. So as we have automated, we have taken out of this e-commerce consumer relationship that what we crave the most, which is I want to have a connectivity. I want to have a relationship with you, Nan. I want to know what makes you tick. I want to know what keeps you up at night, and vice versa. So we have pretty much, through so much of automation, taken that out of the equation. I mean, try actually talking to a customer service rep, on the phone. It's really hard. And that has now come back, right? That is now something that we have, and going forward, we're realizing that is going to completely redefine commerce. It's no longer about I'm okay dealing with the chat bot and me, the customer, figuring out. It's really, I want a relationship with that same person at that vendor, and I want it to be authentic. And the hundreds and thousands of interviews that we've done, it comes up every single time that people want authentic relationships. The third is companies will organize around the customer in order to deliver speed, right? In order to have time as a base of a competitiveness, in order to have authentic relationships, there has to be a redefinition on how we actually go about serving the customer. We have historically had hierarchical organizations, right? We can say they're matrix, they're flat, whatever, they're still hierarchical. And we've been very wedded to our culture of perks with ranks. That does not enable agility, that does not enable speed. So what you're going to see are organizations are going to break apart their organizations, and they're going to come up with smaller cross-functional teams that wrap around the customer. So it's the engineer, it's a customer service rep, it's a marketing, it's a sales guy. And it's really focused on that sector and on that customer, and enables them, again, to align to the customer, deliver the connectivity, and to innovate much more rapidly than they were in our traditional hierarchies, which leads us to the fourth mega trend, which is something called, if you follow George Day, I highly recommend it, of vigilant organizations driven by purpose. So vigilant organizations are long-term oriented organizations. We have been in the last 40, 50 years, probably longer than that, focused on short-termism. You know, what's the next quarter? What's the next year? You know, what's my report to the stock market? You know, how is that going to react? It's all about making decisions that optimize the short term to the negative effect of the long term. So case in point, 60 years ago, or in the 1950s and 1960s, the average lifespan of an organization was 60 years. Today, in 2020, it's less than 18 years, right? And because we are making these decisions, this is now going to be the pendulum will swing in the other direction. And now it's going to be focused on, I need to make long-term decisions. I need to make long-term strategic decisions and those trade-offs, right? Without being, you know, at the mercy of those that are judging me on a quarterly basis. The lining that's different that sits underneath it is finally the rise of the purpose. And the rise of the purpose is typically sustainability. So you're going to see more and more organizations aligning with the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. There's 17 of them that will then say, I am a long-term organization and I'm focused on human trafficking or water management or you know, whatever that purpose is. And we have to thank the millennials for that. Millennials were instrumental in bringing that to the forefront. So the next one after that of the megatrends are the business models will shift from efficiency to agility and speed. We have used over the last 20 to 30 years automation for efficiency and productivity. So, and what happens when you institutionalize that kind of automation, you institutionalize rigidity, right? So it becomes very difficult when something happens to respond because you've codified into our organizations, well, this is how you're going to write a check, well, or how you're going to send a wire. This is how you actually do sourcing of raw materials. This is how we hire. This is how we fire, right? And that doesn't work if you're going to compete on time. That doesn't work if you're going to align around the organization. And so now we're looking at organizations that say, how do I actually structure for agility and speed? That means it has to be flatter organizations. That means that we have to redefine that the term employee, right? This is a notion that was back in the 1950s, 40s, and 30s. That is not a notion that applies today. So I take employee out of the vocabulary and I put in worker, because your worker will not necessarily be on your payroll and the property of that company from 9 to 5. The worker is going to be a gig worker, part-time worker, you know, all sorts of different models. And so the idea is I'm going to be able to bring in business models in which I can use the right skills at the right time without making necessarily this long-term investment and then having to deal with those consequences. So it's agility and speed. And the last mega trend is that global supply chains, which have all been in the news, will really restructure, and they are happening already, to proximity to demand. And it's not just about saying I'm going to onshore or nearshore manufacturing. That's a piece of it. But what we're going to see is a rethink of, should I actually be manufacturing this particular product? If you look at 3D printing, it will be very common to have 3D printers in our house. If I'm going to need an elbow joint, why would I go to Ace Hardware or order it on Amazon when I can just print it? And it enables personalization, enables individualization. If I can print what I need and I can actually individualize it to my particular needs, right? I am right there, demand and supply are right next to each other. And that is going to create a whole new set of industries and a whole new set of companies that are just focused on enabling those customers to individualize and take into consideration their uniqueness in their own products and services. And so the world, you know, in this world is amazing opportunities for companies. Yeah, it's going to be bumpy, but, you know, in it is the humanity, right? In it is the regaining of, you know, we are humans and we are social creatures. So let's not try to suppress that. Let's actually leverage that.
So you talk about sustainability and the life of a company being dramatically different today, being 18 years rather than, you know,
60.
Well, I think of our business, we're celebrating our 40th year in business this year. But if 18 years is more what we're looking for, then, and do you think that will trend will continue so that um, time will get longer or shorter?
I
Shorter?
think I think in the long run they will become longer. In the short term, it will become shorter, right? So there is a mindset. Now, mind you, I live in the tech world, right? So my orientation is tech and discrete manufacturing. So, you know, let's just say that, I have a bias. There is a lot of unlearning that needs to happen in this particular industry. If I go back to when I started my career, companies were built on being a healthy company, right? How do I have a long-term value? How do I create value for my customers? Because that was the root, the baseline for loyalty. Since 2000, it's been, how do I build a company that I can sell to Google? Or I can sell to Oracle, right? How can I flip this company? And it's not the entrepreneurs at fault, it's the entire structure that's at fault. Everything from the venture capitalists across the board. So that creates companies that aren't built for value, they're built for greed. And that has to be unraveled and that has to be undone. And again, this is not a conversation that's new. There's been recognition for many years that the venture capital model does not work. It doesn't work for the limited partners. It doesn't work for the entrepreneurs, and for a whole host of reasons that we don't have time to get into. But it will take time because the shift in the focus isn't about how do I have more consumerism? How do I collect more stuff as my little trophy of I have value because I can now buy X, Y, and Z. The shifting is how do I actually create value by impacting the community? How do I take care of my tribe? How do I take care of my planet? Seeing a jellyfish in Venice, to me, is remarkable. And many of us have been to Venice, of which you look at the water and you're like, not on, that will not go away. And that is what's driving it. And you cannot have sustainability and you cannot have that business model because it is complex, and you cannot have a circular economy in a world of short-termism. It doesn't work. So it will be bumpy, but it will then elongate.
So how are the millennials and the upcoming Gen Zers really impacting what's happening? You said they are impacting it. Expand on that a little bit, would you?
This is a tough generation. I feel bad for them, especially folks that are graduating this year from university or from high school. There's a whole part of their life that we experience that they don't get to experience. What I find amazing in this generation is that the millennials are the ones that started, and again, let's leave the stereotypes aside, but what started looking much more at making decisions on the brands that they purchased from based upon how those brands behaved. Meaning, did they have mission? Did they have purpose? Did they live their mission? Did they live their purpose? Right? And this generation was very, very much steeped into really understanding, well, if you buy a pair of jeans, how much fresh water is actually used in processing those jeans? What's the environmental impact of fast fashion, right? And so that really grew with the millennials, and then it came down to Gen Z, which are the young adults that are graduating from college now. And it still stayed with them, right? So you look at the rise of companies like ThreadUp or RealReal or all of these companies where there's an entire market on how do I reuse things, right? And so I think they have been extremely instrumental and have been instrumental in teaching our generation and teaching their parents on really how do you live sustainably? How do you go about making those decisions? Right? And it has to be in all aspects of your life. And, it's not the end of the world that, that you don't have a plastic straw, right? So they have been very much educating the older generations. And I think that is something that now that they're in the workforce, they're bringing those values into the business decisions that they're making. And it has a ripple effect across everything from hotels to where, how you actually purchase, office supplies and raw materials for manufacturing.
It's interesting because when you think back to the Depression in the, what was that, 20s, 30s, the Great Depression, you think about how people were always into reusing things and making things last longer. And sometimes, in the last, few years, I think about the waste that we are doing every day, where we're looking even at the labels of things and going, oh, this is a day out of the expiration, so I better, throw this out. So we've gotten into such a disposable society that I can't, it's good. I think that it's turning back if it is.
Yeah. And things go in cycles, right? And that we are now aware of it, right? We're aware of the fact that we have no place to put our plastic. And and the amount of innovation that's actually happening in recycling is amazing, right? So you're looking at microbes that eat plastic. You look at, different types of worms that will break down plastic. And I think the more it's in the media, the more we see, fish dying and whales and dolphins dying. There was a whale that died with some 60 odd pounds of plastic in its stomach. I mean, it's just, how could we do this, right? How could we do this? And I think this is, I go back to, when I was, growing up, and there was the song, right? The Age of Aquarius, right? And it didn't happen when we thought it was going to happen, because no one can agree when the Age of Aquarius is actually going to begin. But I do think that we are coming into this world of where there is great innovation, but yet we are regaining our humanity, and we're much more, much more in tune. But it's not across the board, right? And some people aren't ready yet, and that's okay. And some people are ready, and go for it. Let's celebrate those individuals. But the change is coming. I mean, if we look at this, the rapidness of change. Okay, we did away with plastic straws. Well, I remember when there were paper straws, right? And then they get all mushy and you had to tear the top off, right? Look how quickly went from plastic straws to metal straws, right? So we, there is a lot of places now where there are signs that say we as a society were ready. We've been ready for a while. No one's like going, oh my God, I can't have my plastic straw. Like, oh, okay, I need to buy a metal straw. Or everything down to looking at a cup and say, oh, it's lined in plastic. I'm not going to go that. I'll bring you my mug. So it's the little things that are starting to happen. And I'm seeing it in grocery stores. I intentionally don't buy plastic as much as possible. If I can't get it in glass and I can't get it in metal, then I'm going to try not to buy it at all, right? So no body wash, bar soap, instant coffee, maybe not instant coffee, maybe just, take the extra 3 minutes to drip the coffee, right? So it's those little choices that we can make. And if we run out of ideas, go find somebody who's like 25 years old, and they'll fill you in lots of other ideas.
I can see that hotels are moving that direction, from all the little sample bottles of shampoo and lotion that you used to get. I know in California, they have totally done away with that and said that not anymore. We're going to have big bottles. Those big bottles are going to be anchored on the wall, and that will be it. So we will eventually turn, and it's a good thing we are. When you think about things like garbage, we talked about recycling, but what about garbage? Mm-hmm. And where is all this garbage going when you think about how much garbage we are generating every day? And if we burn it, what does that do to the atmosphere and the climate? And then we get into climate control. So things have to change. I think they have to change.
Well, and you're absolutely correct, right? I consider myself very grateful in that our Australian client is a large national lab of Australia, and they happen to do quite a bit of work all over the world. And so I get exposed for the last 2 years, our firm gets exposed to these scientists that are on the bleeding edge of this stuff, right? And it really causes you to think, right? It causes you to think what's possible. think that, I would like to try composting. So I shop differently based upon what I hear that these scientists are working on, who are infinitely smarter than I am. But you get a glimpse into the world that is coming when you start to see where this raw and true innovation is happening. There's a fabric, I think it's called graphene, that is coming now into the clothing market. It lasts for 100 years. I'm not kidding. It lasts for 100 years. And it has this very unique property because it's made out of nanotubes, in that if you wear it as a jacket, it'll absorb the heat that, that your body gives off during the day. It stores that heat in the fabric. So if you wear it at night, it then slowly releases that heat to keep you warm. So there are pants out there are jackets out there. So we're coming to that point where we are redefining our values, right? Away from, I got to have all this stuff, to what really is my impact, right? What is my value? What is my role in this community, in my tribe, and and I don't want to say in our nation, because that's a different discussion, because, national boundaries are something we have created. There are none when you look at the earth from space, but, we look at it more from the community and the tribe. So it's coming. We just need to try and encourage each other.
Well, this has been a very interesting discussion. Thank you so much, Christine, for giving us just a different look at things, and maybe a little futuristic, which is exactly what we need.
Thank you, Nan.